folks, emotions are so important. They really are drivers for all of us in our decision making, in the goals that we're chasing, in the lives we want to live, in the situations we want to be in. But they're also drivers in situations we want to get out of. And so if I'm feeling positive, good about something, it means I'm drawn to that goal. If I'm not feeling positive about something, it means I'm pushing against that goal. I'm pushing that goal away, or I'm pushing that outcome away. And it's important for us to remember that our clients are in that exact situation. And so very often we're talking about a lot of money. We're talking about some kind of change that might have to take place. A person might be selling a house to buy another house, and there's all kinds of emotions that is wrapped up in that. And the reality is that even when you're spending somebody else's money, in other words, if you're a buyer on behalf of a company who's buying somebody's product, there is still an emotional connection. And so it's been discussed over the past, and I think it's fairly proven at this point that people buy emotionally, but then they justify logically after the fact. So I loved my little sports car, but I'll justify it afterwards logically. The reality is I've always wanted my little car. I love that I can take the hood down, the roof down, and I can drive this little coupe. I feel great in it. But logically, I'll say to people, hey, it's not a muscle car. It's just a very sexy little car. So fuel consumption is great, and I can zip around Seattle, and I don't get stuck in traffic and all that kind of stuff. I'm justifying logically. But emotionally, I just love the car. I could always see myself sitting in one, You could have the right product. You could have the best price. Your company could literally be the best in the world at this thing. But if you've not established an emotional connection with your client, your chances of selling are massively reduced. It really becomes an uphill battle at that point. And so we need to find the right emotional connections to bypass the objections that are really just signs that your client is pushing your solution away, or pushing your product away, or pushing you away. And so it's important to understand that we all have emotions, your client has emotions, and your job as a salesperson is to navigate the discussion, but keep your eyes and ears open for the emotional triggers that you feel you see in your client. Now, we're not trying to turn you into a pseudo psychologist or some pop psychologist, but it's really not that difficult. You can tell in people's body language, you can tell by some of the things that they say and what their responses are, what emotions are being triggered. And there's a whole bunch of them. There's fear, there's desire, there's pain, there's relief, pride, a sense of belonging. People hate being left out of things. In fact, most of us are just trying to belong somewhere. There's hope. There is frustration. There is urgency. I've got a big problem and I need it fixed urgently. And so your strategy at this point is really going to move away from a presentation or a pitch. Oh my goodness, please let's move away from pitching. Research is showing over and over and over again that the worst part of a sales interaction from the client's perspective is the pitch. They hate the pitch. And so I'm going, so don't do it. Don't do it. Why don't we come up with a strategy where we are no longer telling, but we're actually asking for information? My favorite quotation that I tell so many of my students is that telling is always perceived as selling, and people find it repelling. Genius. And so the strategy I would suggest is to ask questions. Somebody is seemingly fearful about making a decision. So let's just say they've got to fix a piece of machinery in their factory that's not working, but they seem a little bit nervous about the change or about the money. Immediately ask the person, what are going to be the implications if you don't make this change? How much money are you going to be losing by not having this situation fixed? Are you able to absorb that kind of loss? Someone is feeling very frustrated, ask them, where do you feel stuck? Why do you feel so frustrated? And this is not just about your presentation. This is where someone in the company is expressing a frustration within the company. Ask a couple of questions. In what way are things holding you up, or are you feeling stuck, or you are feeling this tremendous frustration? If someone is speaking to you about the kind of money that they'd make or the kind of exposure they'd get if they made a good decision on this purchase and it increased sales, ask them, how would that impact you? How would making an extra $20,000 a month, $200,000 a month, $2 million a month, whatever it is, how would that impact you in this business? How would that impact you personally? And so ask questions that trigger emotions. Very often I will say to a client, how do you feel about this? So a client comes and tells you, well, my car is knocking every time I turn right. And then when I put the indicator on, it's squeaking. I will ask the client, how does that make you feel? Now, it sounds counterintuitive and it sounds kind of stupid, and maybe it is. But for me, it's getting the client to talk about their pain driving that vehicle, that when I show them a new vehicle that doesn't knock every time they turn left or squeak when they push certain buttons, suddenly the emotion to getting out of that is heightened and the frustration of the other stuff is less. Listen deeply. I think that sometimes I can slip up by telling people ask questions, ask questions, ask questions, but I've got to encourage you to also listen. Everything that the client gives back to you is information, and actually it's information on why they need and want your product. And so I would often reflect back to the client as well, where are you feeling stuck in the business? And people are going, well, the communication's not working, and I feel like we are now missing gaps in the communication and the hierarchical structure, whatever. For me to then go, how do you feel about that? Why are you feeling so stuck there? Whatever they get back to me, I feel like I'm working very hard and I'm not being seen. I feel like I'm doing a lot of work for too many different people. I can do one of these things and get it just to one person for argument's sake. Reflect that back. Thank you so much for that. Just so that I understand, you would rather do one report and send it to 3 different people rather than 3 reports? Is that what I'm hearing? And you're just clarifying, but you're also working on that client's emotion and finding out exactly why they want the product and how it's going to make them feel, how it's going to make them look. So ask a lot of questions. When you see an emotion rising up, go into that thing and ask the client. One of the things that you'll find is that people feel cared about. Literally, people feel cared about. Oh, he's actually interested in my feelings. And this is not manipulative. This is not manipulative. It's me caring about my client, but I need to understand what triggers are going on. What are the emotions that are pushing them and pulling them? And so anybody can learn how to do this. You can practice it. You can make this happen. Go for it.